I walked into my grocery store 2 weeks ago expecting my usual bill. Somewhere around $60, maybe $65 for the week. Standard stuff. Eggs, canned beans, a few bags of rice, some frozen vegetables. I stood at the register and watched the total climb past $90. Nothing fancy. Nothing different. Same items I buy every single week. And the cashier just looked at me like this was normal. Like nothing had changed. Like I wasn't standing there doing math in my head trying to figure out what happened. That's when I started actually paying attention. Not just noticing prices. Really paying attention. Tracking which items were creeping up, which ones were about to, and which ones you can still lock in right now before the next wave hits. And what I found surprised me. Because it's not random. There are patterns. There are reasons. And if you know what to look for, you can stay ahead of it instead of getting blindsided at the register like I was. I put together a list of 15 foods that are still affordable right now, but based on everything I've been tracking, that window is closing. Some of these you probably already buy. A few of them are going to genuinely shock you. And number 8, I'm telling you right now, number 8 is the one nobody sees coming. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe. I put out content like this every week. Real information. No hype. Just things that actually matter for your budget. Let's get into it. Item 1. Dry pinto beans. Dry pinto beans are one of the best deals left in the entire grocery store. A 2-pound bag still runs around $2 at most Walmarts and grocery outlets. That same 2 pounds will feed a family of 4 multiple times. But here's what I want you to understand. Dry beans have been quietly rising for about 18 months now. Supply chain pressures from major growing regions in the American Southwest and northern Mexico have been documented across agricultural reports. Drought conditions, rising fuel costs for transport, and increased demand from food banks and bulk buyers are all pushing in the same direction. I checked the commodity price data myself. Dry pinto beans are up roughly 22% over the past 2 years when you look at wholesale pricing. That hasn't fully shown up at retail yet. It will. When I talk to someone who works in grocery distribution, not a manager, just someone who moves product, they told me that beans are one of the categories where the shelf price is almost always the last thing to move. The cost builds up quietly over months until the store can't absorb it anymore. Then it adjusts fast. Right now, 2-pound bags are still under $3 at most major retailers. A $10 investment in dry pinto beans gives you a serious amount of food that stores for up to 5 years in a cool, dry pantry. You don't need anything special. A sealed container and a shelf is enough. Stock up now. The window on this one is shorter than most people think. Item 2. Canned tuna. Canned tuna is one of those foods that most people assume will always be cheap. And for a long time, they were right. But that assumption is starting to cost people money. Major tuna fishing operations have been under pressure from 2 directions at once. Fuel costs for deep-sea fishing fleets have risen significantly since 2022 and haven't fully recovered. And several major fishing zones have introduced catch limits designed to address long-term stock sustainability. Less supply. Higher cost to bring it in. That math only goes one way. I noticed something at my local Kroger a few months back. The store-brand 5-ounce can of tuna that used to be 69 cents is now regularly priced at $1.19. That's a 72% increase on a product that most shoppers aren't paying close attention to because it's just tuna. It's always been there. It's always been cheap. Name brands like Chicken of the Sea and Starkist have already adjusted their pricing on multipacks. What used to be an 8-pack for under $8 is now pushing $11 or $12 at most major stores, including Costco on certain varieties. Stock up on whatever fits your pantry space. Store brand is fine. The quality difference is minimal and the savings are real. I personally keep about 20 cans on hand at any given time. It sounds like a lot until you realize a can of tuna with some pasta and olive oil is a complete meal for under $2. That math is going to look even better in 6 months. Item 3. White rice. I know. Everyone already knows about rice. But I want you to understand what's specifically happening right now, because the situation has changed in the last few months and most people haven't updated their thinking. In 2023, India, the world's largest exporter of rice, placed export restrictions on several varieties to stabilize their domestic food supply. Those restrictions have loosened somewhat, but the global rice trade is still recalibrating. Meanwhile, production in key Southeast Asian growing regions continues to face weather-related disruptions. A 20-pound bag of long-grain white rice at Walmart is still around $12 to $13 right now. That is an extraordinary amount of food for the price. But regional store managers I've spoken with have noted that their wholesale costs on rice have been creeping up since late 2024. I checked prices myself at 3 different stores in my area over the past month: Sam's Club, Walmart, and a local grocery chain. The local chain is already about 15% higher per pound than the big box options. That gap is usually a leading indicator of where Walmart pricing is headed, not next week, but in the next pricing cycle. White rice stores for 25 to 30 years in sealed, oxygen-free containers. Even in a regular sealed bucket or large Ziploc bags with the air pressed out, it'll last 5 years easily. Buy the biggest bag your storage allows. The cost per meal is still almost unbeatable. Item 4. Frozen chicken thighs. Chicken breast gets all the attention. Everyone talks about chicken breast prices. But chicken thighs, and specifically frozen bone-in thighs in the large family packs, are still one of the best deals in the meat section. Here's the thing about chicken right now. The poultry industry has been dealing with a compounding set of problems. Feed costs, primarily corn and soy, have remained elevated. Energy costs for climate-controlled processing and storage facilities are still well above pre-pandemic levels. And bird flu outbreaks, while largely managed, have created periodic supply disruptions that keep the baseline price from ever fully dropping back to where it was. Frozen bone-in chicken thighs are still running around $140 to $170 per pound at most major retailers when you buy the large 5-pound or 10-pound bags. That price is held relatively stable, but it's being held artificially in a competitive sense. Retailers know chicken is a traffic driver. People see cheap chicken and they come in the store. That strategy has limits. Once other input costs squeeze far enough, the price has to move. Multiple people I've spoken with who work in grocery retail have said the same thing independently. Meat is the department where they're feeling the most internal pricing pressure right now. Buy the largest bag that fits in your freezer. Chicken thighs keep for up to 9 months frozen without any real quality loss. And they're more forgiving to cook than chicken breast, which is a genuine bonus. Item 5. Dried pasta. A 1-pound box of dried pasta, spaghetti, penne, rotini, doesn't matter, is still under $2 at most stores. Some store brands are still under $1. That is remarkable given where grain markets have been. Wheat prices have been volatile since 2022. The situation in Eastern Europe caused significant disruption to global wheat supply that year, and while things have partially stabilized, grain traders and food manufacturers are operating with much thinner buffers than before. Any new disruption, whether geopolitical, transportation, hits the system faster than it used to. Pasta manufacturers absorbed a lot of those costs internally through 2023 and 2024. They reduced promotional pricing. They shrunk multipack slightly. But the base shelf price stayed low because pasta is one of those items where consumers are extremely price sensitive. People notice. People switch brands immediately. I noticed when I was shopping at Aldi last month that a few pasta varieties had already bumped up about 15 cents per box compared to 3 months earlier. That might not sound like much, but Aldi is usually one of the last places prices move. When they move, it means something. Dried pasta has a shelf life of 2 or more years in normal conditions. 3 to 5 years if you seal it in an airtight container away from moisture. A $10 investment in pasta right now gives you a lot of meals. By a variety of shapes. It breaks up the monotony and they all cook the same way. Item 6. Canned tomatoes. Diced, crushed, whole, paste. Canned tomatoes are the backbone of more meals than most people realize. And they're quietly at the edge of a significant pricing shift. California produces somewhere around 90% of the canned tomatoes consumed in the United States. And California's agricultural sector has been under serious strain. Water availability, energy costs, and labor costs have all been increasing simultaneously. Tomato processors have been negotiating harder with retailers on every contract renewal cycle for the past 2 years. A 14-ounce can of store-brand diced tomatoes is still about 79 to 89 cents at most major grocers. A 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, which is genuinely one of the most useful items in a pantry, is still under $2 at places like Walmart and Aldi. Those prices are going to change. The agricultural reports I've been following on California processing tomato yields suggest that this year's crop faced challenges from early season heat and inconsistent water availability in key growing regions. That shows up in retail prices with a lag of about 6 to 12 months. I keep at least 30 to 40 cans of various tomato products in my pantry at any given time. Pasta sauce, chili, soups, stews. Canned tomatoes touch almost every hearty meal I cook. The shelf life is 2+ years. The price per use is still extraordinary. But that value window is closing faster than most people expect. Item 7. Oats. Old-fashioned rolled oats and quick oats are among the last genuinely cheap breakfast foods left. A 42-ounce container of store-brand oats, which is what, 30 or 40 servings, is still under $4 at most stores. That's under 15 cents per meal. Oat production is concentrated in a relatively small number of regions globally, with Canada and the northern United States accounting for a huge share of supply. That concentration creates vulnerability. Any significant crop disruption in those regions, and there have been several smaller ones over the past few years, affects global availability and price simultaneously. What I've been watching is the Quaker brand pricing at major retailers. Quaker Oats is owned by PepsiCo, and PepsiCo has been very transparent in their investor communications about applying pricing power across their product portfolio to offset margin pressure. That language is corporate for, prices are going up. The store brands are still holding. But store brands typically move within a few cycles of the name brand. If you're a store brand oat buyer, which, honestly, you should be, you probably have 1 to 2 pricing cycles before you feel the adjustment. Rolled oats store for 2 years in their original container, and up to 30 years in properly sealed Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers if you want to go that route. For a few dollars, you can have months of breakfast covered. That's the kind of simple math that keeps your budget stable when everything else is moving. Item 8. Cooking oil. Here it is. Number 8. And I'm going to be honest with you, this one genuinely caught me off guard when I dug into it. Vegetable oil. Canola oil. Corn oil. The big generic jugs you grab off the shelf without thinking about it. These are about to go through another significant pricing adjustment. And most people won't notice until they're already paying 40% more per bottle. Here's what's happening. Global vegetable oil markets are interconnected in ways that most shoppers never think about. Palm oil, soy oil, canola oil, and sunflower oil compete with and substitute for each other in both food and fuel applications. The biofuel industry, particularly in Europe and increasingly in the United States, has dramatically increased demand for vegetable oils as feedstocks. That demand doesn't go away. It competes directly with food use. And when supply gets tight in any one type, like sunflower oil did in 2022, the entire category reprices upward together. Right now, a 48-ounce bottle of vegetable oil or canola oil is still around $4 to $5 at most major retailers. That same bottle was around $2.50 before 2021. We've already seen a significant jump. What I'm tracking now suggests another meaningful increase is building in the commodity markets, with a retail lag of about 6 to 9 months. I looked into this myself after noticing that restaurant supply companies, the wholesale buyers who purchase cooking oil in large drums, have already seen their costs move meaningfully higher in the last 2 quarters. Retail always follows wholesale. It just takes longer. Buy a few extra bottles. Oil stores for 1 to 2 years unopened. At $4 or $5 now versus what might be $7 or $8 in a year, the savings are real. This is a genuinely underappreciated item on this list. I wish someone had told me to stock up on this earlier. Item 9. Dried lentils. Lentils might be the single most undervalued item in the entire grocery store right now. A 1-pound bag still costs about $1.20 to $1.50 at most stores. That bag makes multiple complete meals. And lentils are one of the most nutritionally complete plant proteins you can buy. High in protein, high in fiber, and extremely filling. Global lentil production is dominated by Canada and India, and both countries have been managing their export policies more actively in recent years. When major producing nations start talking about export controls or domestic prioritization, which both have done in various forms recently, prices in importing countries follow. The United States imports a significant portion of its lentils. That import dependency means American retail prices are exposed to whatever is happening in global markets in a way that domestically grown crops are not. A friend of mine who works at a food distribution company told me something about 6 months ago that has stuck with me. He said that legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas are one of the categories where wholesale prices are running meaningfully ahead of retail prices right now. The gap between what stores are paying and what they're charging shoppers is compressing. Something has to give. Lentils require no soaking, cook in 20 minutes, and store for 5 or more years in a sealed container. For the price and the nutrition, there is no better deal in the store. Buy multiple bags. Red lentils, green lentils, French lentils. They all cook slightly differently and give you variety without spending more money. Item 10. Canned beans, black beans and chickpeas. I know we already talked about dry pinto beans. But canned beans are a different conversation and they deserve their own spot on this list. The convenience factor of canned beans, no soaking, no long cooking time, ready in minutes, means that for most households, canned beans are actually the ones getting used regularly. And the price is still remarkably reasonable. A 15-ounce can of black beans or chickpeas is typically under $1 at most stores. Under $1. For a complete plant protein with significant fiber content. The issue is the same as with canned tomatoes and other canned goods. Steel costs have remained elevated. Energy costs for canning facilities are up. Transportation is still expensive. And the underlying commodity prices for the beans themselves are climbing. Canned goods manufacturers have historically managed price increases through a combination of smaller can sizes and gradual shelf price adjustments. We've already seen some of the can size changes. If your can of beans seems slightly smaller than it used to be, you're not imagining it. The price adjustments are the next phase. I buy whatever is on sale between store brand and name brand. The quality is genuinely identical and I've done side-by-side comparisons myself. Stock up when you see a sale. Buy cases if you have the space. $1 today is going to look like a bargain in comparison to what these cost in 12 months. Item 11. Peanut butter. Peanut butter is one of the most calorie-dense, protein-rich, shelf-stable foods available at any price point. And it's still sitting at around $3 to $4 for a 16 to 18-ounce jar at most stores. That price has already moved. A few years ago, a large jar of store-brand peanut butter was $2 or less. We've already absorbed one major price increase. But what I want you to pay attention to is what's happening with peanut growing conditions in the American Southeast, which is where the majority of US peanuts are grown. Drought and heat stress in key growing states, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, have been documented in agricultural reporting for the past 2 seasons. Peanut yields are sensitive to moisture timing in ways that make them vulnerable to the kind of inconsistent rainfall patterns that have been showing up in weather data. Peanut butter manufacturers typically contract their supply in advance, which means retail prices lag actual crop conditions by a growing season or two. What happened in the fields in 2024 and 2025 may not be fully reflected in what you're paying right now. A closed jar of peanut butter has a shelf life of up to 2 years. Once opened, it stays good for about 3 months. My approach is to keep 4 to 6 jars on hand and rotate through them. At $3 to $4 per jar, you're getting an enormous amount of nutrition per dollar. That ratio is going to worsen. Item 12. Frozen vegetables, peas, corn, and green beans. Frozen vegetables are one of the great underappreciated values in the entire grocery store. A 12 to 16-ounce bag of frozen peas, corn, or green beans is still around $1.50 to $2 at most major retailers. That is nutritionally equivalent to, and in many cases better than, fresh produce, because frozen vegetables are processed at peak ripeness. The economics of frozen vegetables are interesting. Processing and storage requires energy, a lot of it. Freezer facilities, refrigerated transport, and in-store frozen sections all run on electricity. As energy costs have remained elevated, the operational costs for frozen food manufacturers and distributors have stayed high. Several major frozen vegetable brands have already indicated through their earnings calls and supplier communications that they are managing significant cost pressure. Birds Eye and other major brands have quietly reduced promotional frequency, meaning fewer sales and fewer coupons, which is a soft price increase that most shoppers don't consciously notice. What I do now is buy the store brand in whatever variety is cheapest that week and build up a rotating stock in my freezer. Frozen vegetables keep for 8 to 12 months without quality loss. Given that fresh produce prices have been volatile and fresh vegetables can spoil quickly, having a freezer stocked with frozen peas and corn is one of the smartest and most undervalued things you can do for your food budget right now. Item 13. Canned sardines and mackerel. This one surprises people. But stay with me, because the math here is extraordinary and the window is closing. Canned sardines and canned mackerel are still available at major retailers for under $2 a can, sometimes under $1.50. They are among the most nutritionally dense foods you can buy, high in omega-3 fatty acids, protein, calcium if you eat the bones, and vitamin D. The health profile of a can of sardines competes with foods that cost 10 or 15 times as much. The fishing economics for small oily fish like sardines and mackerel are under pressure from multiple directions. Fuel costs for fishing fleets, catch regulations in key fishing regions in the Atlantic and Pacific, and growing international demand, particularly from Asian markets where these fish are dietary staples. I'll be honest, I resisted canned sardines for years. I thought of them as something from a different era. Then I tried a simple preparation, sardines on whole grain crackers with a little hot sauce and some sliced onion, and I completely changed my mind. They're genuinely good. And at under $2 for a can that represents a complete meal, the value is hard to argue with. Stock up on these. The brand that you'll typically find at Walmart and most grocery stores in the $2 range has been creeping upward. But it's still in the affordable range right now. 6 to 12 cans in your pantry is a smart hedge that most people aren't making. Item 14. All-purpose flour. A 5-pound bag of all-purpose flour is still around $3 at most stores. For anyone who bakes at all, bread, pancakes, muffins, pizza dough, thickening sauces, flour is foundational. And it's one of those items where a small price move has an outsized impact on a baker's budget because you use so much of it. Wheat prices globally have not normalized to pre-2022 levels. They've come down from their peaks, but the underlying market remains exposed. Weather in key wheat-producing regions, including parts of North America, Europe, and South Asia, has become less predictable, and the insurance buffers that used to smooth out supply disruptions are thinner than they were a decade ago. Major flour brands, Gold Medal, King Arthur, Pillsbury, have all been managing price carefully because flour is one of those items where brand loyalty is extremely low. If a brand increases price by 20 cents, shoppers switch to store brand immediately. That competitive pressure has kept retail prices from fully reflecting wholesale costs. That suppression has a limit. Store managers I've spoken with have noted that the flour category is one where they're watching their margins very carefully right now. The phrase watching margins carefully in retail language means prices are about to move. 5-pound bags of flour store well for up to a year in a sealed container. If you want to extend that to several years, sealed food-grade buckets work well. For a $3 investment right now, you can have a lot of baking security for the months ahead. Item 15. Whole rolled oats, Costco and club store size. I know we talked about oats already at number 7. But the club store format deserves its own mention because the math is dramatically different and the strategy is different. A 10-pound bag of rolled oats at Costco or Sam's Club is still around $12 to $13. That is a very large amount of oats for that price. We are talking well over 100 servings. The per serving cost is genuinely under 12 cents. That number is going to look remarkable in comparison to where it's heading. Here's the specific issue with club store pricing on pantry staples. Costco in particular has maintained aggressive pricing on staple foods as a membership retention strategy. It's part of their value proposition. But even Costco has to respond to its own cost pressures eventually. What they tend to do is hold price as long as possible, then adjust more significantly all at once rather than incrementally. What that means for you as a shopper is that you get longer windows of value, but when the window closes, it closes fast. I've noticed this pattern across multiple staple categories at Costco over the past 2 years. Rice, sugar, oil, and now I'm watching oats. If you have a Costco or Sam's Club membership, the large format oats are one of the best buys available to you right now. Rolled oats in sealed conditions can last up to 30 years, though practically speaking, 2 to 4 years is realistic for most households. Buy the big bag. Store it properly. Rotate through it. This is one of the simplest and most impactful things you can do for your food budget in 2026. Here's what all 15 of these items have in common. They're not fancy. They're not trending. They're not the things showing up in food content or lifestyle posts. They're the foundational layer of an affordable diet. The ingredients that show up in every culture's traditional cooking because they are calorie-dense, nutritious, shelf-stable, and cheap. And they're under pressure right now from the same set of forces hitting the entire food system simultaneously: energy costs, labor costs, transportation costs, weather disruptions, and global supply chain fragility. The interesting thing about food inflation is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say on this date, prices will increase. It arrives quietly. A few cents here. A slightly smaller can there. A sale that stops happening. And then one day you're standing at the register doing the same math I was doing, wondering when exactly things got this expensive. You now have information that most people don't have yet. Not because you found some secret, but because you paid attention and you're thinking ahead. That's what this is really about. Not panic. Not hoarding. Just making smart decisions with the money you're already spending. Buying a few extra cans of beans or an extra bag of rice this week isn't extreme. It's just being ahead of a curve that everyone else is going to catch up to eventually. The people who act on this kind of information now will look back in 6 to 12 months and feel good about it. The people who don't will just get surprised again at the register. You're not going to be surprised. If you found this useful, please hit the subscribe button. I put this content out every week. Next time we are looking at something that's going to surprise a lot of people. Household items that are about to go through the same kind of pricing shift that food already has. Things you use every single day that you probably haven't been paying attention to. Hit the bell so you don't miss it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next one.